Okay, hi. My name is Lorna, and I want to talk about I want to talk about a topic that a lot of people probably may not even feel comfortable talking about. People sometimes probably don't want to share their story, what they've actually gone through with certain things. But I kind of just wanted to I want to be very transparent, is what I want to be. I want to talk about a topic that I actually wrote about for my senior thesis, and it was titled in Rape and the Effect That It Has on Its Victims. Hence, um, I don't consider, well, I don't really want to be called a victim because even though that was my topic at that time, I don't want to be labeled as a victim. I want to be labeled as somebody that has gone through some things in her life, somebody that still goes through certain things in my life. And so I just want to be transparent and just tell my story. So my story is I was 10 and I was abducted by a 35-year-old man. I didn't know the man whatsoever, but apparently he knew me because he apparently was having an affair with my neighbor that lived next door to me. Hence, I didn't find that out until this person was being prosecuted, and I had to go to court, and then evidence reveals itself, and then you find out like all these things about this person and their life and the type of person that they are. And basically, just in a nutshell, just a raggedy piece of shit. That's what I'm going to call that person, is a raggedy piece of shit. Okay, so I was 10. It was spring break. It was a Friday. And the weather was nice. I remember my mom and I going to like a meat store for her to go buy meat. And we came back to the house. And when I got home, my brothers, they were not home. And so we had bikes and their bikes were missing. And so I wanted to go look for them. And I had bathed, and I didn't ask permission to leave the house. And sometimes I have blamed myself for that, for just leaving. My parents would never give me permission at 10 years old just to leave the house. And so I went over to a local high school to go look for my siblings. I didn't see them. And sometimes they say when you take shortcuts in life, you get bad results. And this particular day, I decided that I was going to take the shortcut home instead of taking the long way home. Sometimes the road less traveled leads to things, and I can tell you that to be true because that's what happened to me. And not just because you take the road less traveled, that doesn't mean that things of this magnitude should happen to anyone. And I saw the individual, and my first instinct was to take the long way home, but I wanted to take the shortcut home. And my wanting to take the shortcut home allowed this person to basically grab me by my neck with a knife in their hand, threatening my life, and they're going to kill me and do all these things to me. And they actually did cut me up with the knife. And I still have those scars to this day from this incident occurring. And this individual did some things to me, had me do some things, and it was the day I would say that as a child I died. Sorry, I really don't want to be emotional about this because I want to tell my story to help someone else out. They may have gone through a traumatic experience in life and you just don't know how to get through it. So this happened to me. I'll never forget the day. I will never forget what I wore. I'll never forget the day of the week it was. But I will say prior to this happening, I was in dare education and I was in the 5th grade. And an officer came and he talked to us about basically if people doing bad things. And he told us, he was like, if somebody does something to you, he was like, you make sure you always tell someone. And he was like, if you're in danger and there's a payphone, you just go to the payphone and you pick the phone up. Even if you don't have any money, you just dial 0 and an operator will help you. And he said sometimes like people, they just tell you, if you tell, they're going to do these things to you. But a lot of times those people don't do anything to you. So after my abduction, was over, and the person, like, I remember him telling me, he was like, well, you have to count to like 100 and before you can like leave or whatever. And he had left before me. And I remember just in the moment while this was going on, just saying like all kind of things just to keep him from like doing anything to me. I remember him telling like I was a boy, because I remember I was flat chested. I had, I wasn't like 100% flat chested. I had like a little bit of bubbing going on in my life. And I remember just saying like all these things to him just to like, just for him just to basically go away and just for him to let me be. And I remember I could hear like sounds that sounded like my brothers that were looking for me, but I couldn't yell out. I tried to yell out, and when I did, like, he covered my mouth, and it was the threat of like he was gonna kill me. And with him having a knife, yeah, I did get scared a bit, so I did what he told me to do. I shut up. And when it was all over, I'll never forget, in my neighborhood, we had security officers, and I walked over to the security officers and I told them what happened to me. And I remember them just telling me like, okay, they asked me where I lived at. They proceeded to walk me home. In the midst of me going home, my mother, she was outside, and I guess they were like still looking for me. She wasn't really happy. When they told her, like, she started yelling and, like, why were you not in the house? And, she was just really upset. And I thought that I really had done something wrong, because this had taken place and I was outside against, my parents knowing. And I didn't take the long way home. I tried to take the shortcut home, and the shortcut didn't it didn't lead me home safely. It left me home frightened. It sent me home bruised. It sent me home with cuts. It sent me home with damages, not only to my mind, but to my soul. It sent me back to a family that didn't know how to handle it. It sent me back to a father that couldn't handle it because he didn't know what to do. It sent me back to a neighborhood where, I started to get into fights with people because they would, make fun of me because this happened to me. It was a very rough time in my life, just to say the least. I was in 5th grade. I could no longer walk to school by myself. I could no longer walk home by myself from school. I always had to be supervised. I always had to wait for my dad to pick me up from school. I never walked home alone. I never rode my bike again. And that hurt because that was the day I had to grow up. I didn't get to be a child. my entire childhood. I had to grow up. And for some, it's like, what is that? It's like, you know, you can't be in Barbie land anymore. You can't be in He-Man She-Ra land anymore. You have to grow up. And you have to get the strength from within to become someone that you're not prepared to be. And that is someone who lives on the edge. That is someone who lives in fear. That is someone who constantly watches their back. That is someone who is just full of fear. And you just never know when that fear is going to interrupt your well-being. You never know when that fear is going to cripple you. You never know when that fear is going to be used against you. And when I say like used against you, people use it against you. Like I was a joke. People made fun of me for that happening. And it's not like something that I asked for. It's not something that I was like, hey, pick me today. I'm going to be your person that you're going to do this to. You know, I didn't decide that. I didn't decide that I wanted to be that person. And so, and having to grow up fast, I basically just had to zone out. I zoned out so bad that it was just bad, and sometimes it was scary because I had suicidal moments at 12 years old. I had suicidal moments at 11 years old. I had suicidal moments at 10 years old. I never actually tried to do any harm to myself, but there were thoughts in my mind, and the one day that I did want to do something to myself, it was because, you know, I had a sibling that was like, you know, tormenting me, and, you know, it was like making jokes, like it was funny. And so we lived in a 3-story townhouse, and my room was in the front, and there was no steps. Like, you know, if I jumped out the window, I knew that I was going to die. And that day I was prepared, and I attempted to jump out the window, but it didn't work because my brother stopped me. And they were always thinking that I had tried, like, multiple times, like, to commit suicide, but I never did. I just only had that one episode where I was going to jump out the window because it was on the 3rd floor, and I figured, like, I'd be flat smack down, like, on the ground. But of course I'm not dead, and I didn't commit suicide because evidently I'm still here and I'm alive and I'm talking about this moment in my life. And I decided, you know, I just wanted to talk about it because I've talked about it before, but not to the magnitude of where it's going to help somebody else out there, somebody else that has gone through this, somebody else that feels like they're unworthy, somebody that feels like they're not good enough, somebody that feels like they're not enough, because you go through those phases where you just feel like you're not enough. Like, I'm not enough. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why me? Yeah, you have those moments. And even as an adult, a super adult now, sometimes I have those moments because I had that moment in life. I've been sexually harassed by men, you know, and I had another encounter where, like, this happened again, you know, in my adulthood, and it's, like, embarrassing because, you know, when it happened in my adulthood, I remember one of my ex-boyfriends, he was like, I can't believe that happened to you. He was like, you're so strong, and he was just like, I just don't understand that, and I was just like, well, I went through a state of shock. Like, I just, when it was happening, yes, I tried to fight the attacker off. Like, I just went through a state of shock. And this is something that my parents don't even know. Like, I think 2 of my brothers know, and I know my sister knows. And my best friend knows. And, I mean, a few people know, but I would never tell my parents. And I would never tell my parents because they already went through this with me when I was 10 years old, and it wasn't good. Months later, my mom ended up having a heart attack at a very young age for her. She was in her early 40s. And I think she probably was just at 40. Somewhere around there. And, like, had a heart attack from, like, the stress. And, and it was rough on my parents. And I never want to put my parents back in that predicament anymore, because my parents, had to go to court for this person. My mom did interviews with the media to locate this person, and it was a lot, needless to say, because your child now is in this place where it's like sheltering, and you're already sheltered, and it's like it's just more sheltering. And I can remember, being in 6th grade, and I was on the dance team, and I didn't come home one day at a time. I was supposed to come home. I didn't come home because my friend, she had diabetes, and she had to go take her insulin. So, I was a little late getting home, and my mom started yelling or whatever, and I was like, well, I had to go with this girl because mom, like, she needed to take her insulin. And, she was really scared, because she thought that something had happened to me. And at this time, like, the person that had did this to me, he hadn't been caught. He hadn't been put in jail. And the sad thing about this person is that I wasn't the only person in my community that he did this to. Like, he did it to other people. I'm not really sure of how many, but I know that there were other people as well, but they didn't want to come forward. And I just think I've just never been afraid to tell on anyone, basically. Even outside of, the DARE education guy. My brother's 1st grade teacher made me be a snitch for him because he wouldn't act right, and she would give me notes to take home to my parents to get him in trouble or whatever, because he just wouldn't do right in school. And so I had to take those bad notes home to my parents, so I've been a snitch for a long time. So you may ask, how did I deal with it? How do I deal with it? I went through a very dark period in my life where hate was all I knew. Like, literally, like, hate, and really meant it. I hated a lot of people. I hated myself. I hated everyone. The truth is, like, I didn't even love my own family members. And that was the truth. And I remember the day that this happened, I went to the hospital afterwards. And I remember my grandfather coming there, and he was like, if he would have had your ass in the house, this wouldn't have happened. And my grandfather was a disgusting, dirty, low-down, trifling piece of shit. And I would say God rest his soul, but I'm sure he's not with the Lord. I'm sure he's in hell burning the fuck up still. He just was a really bad piece of shit, like a horrible person. Just a horrible individual. Just a sick bastard. And I remember I never stayed at home on weekends anymore. For like the first year of this happening, I was every weekend in Fort Knox with my other family members. I would go there for the weekends. I would come back. Fort Knox was my safe place. Like, it was a place where I didn't have any worries. It was fun times. And I was able to have some sense of security, if you will. And then I moved away from my parents for a little bit, just for the summer. to go and be someplace that was also a safe haven and a safe shelter for me. And I know that people in my life, they show me sympathy. Um, did I wouldn't really say I felt any kind of way because of the sympathy. I would say that those people, um, grandmothers, aunts, um, they actually helped me, get away from my surroundings. And I had a moment to be free. I didn't have to fight. I didn't have to be bombarded with people's bullshit. I didn't have to be bombarded with questions, with jokes, of people thinking that my situation was funny. I didn't have to fight. Um, I was able just to be myself. But then there were times, a lot of dark times, where you sit and you think about it, you black out about it, you go back to that day, and you just black out, and you just become very angry, you become very bitter. And I used to write hate poems. Like, I would just write, I hate people, and I really meant it. And I already had bad behavior prior to this happening to me. And so my behavior, bad behavior, not good behavior, my bad behavior magnetized. And I couldn't pinpoint why I was just acting so ridiculously bad. Like, I mean, I was bad. Although my parents were strict, I just was ridiculously, like, out of control. And I was hurting for a long time. And there was never going to be anyone there that was ever going to help me get over this. My mom had me go see a therapist. It didn't help. And it didn't help because the wound was too fresh and I needed time to process. And when you're 10 years old, like, how do you know how to process? You don't. You go into fear. You go into like survival mode where, every day you're just trying to survive. Um, Basically that's what you do. Um, that individual, by the time I was in 8th grade, we started going to court, and it's crazy when you actually have to face the person that did these horrific things to you. And the reason being is because it's like they're up close, they're personal. Like, it's very scary. It's very scary as a child, having to be prepped, like going to court, just getting an understanding of how it's going to go and how the proceedings are going to go, what they're probably going to ask you, and how many times you're going to have to retell it, how many times you're going to have to be in front of the person that did this to you. It was a lot. It was scary. And that fear made me not want to live in my hometown anymore. That fear made me, just as soon as I turned 18, I wanted to get the fuck away. I remember being 16 years old, trying to move to Dallas. It didn't work. I tried, but it didn't work. I made it to Dallas, and I was in Dallas for a minute visiting family, but when I tried to stay, it didn't work. My mom made me come home, and I'm kind of mad about that, but because I wanted to get away from where I was at, and I also wanted to run track, but more so I just wanted to also get away from home. And when I left home, I had a decision that I was just never going to come back to my home state, because I felt like my home state was a place of regret, a place of where fear was. I always thought, well, this man's going to get out of prison. He's going to do something to me. He's going to do something to my family. And I just wanted to be away. I didn't want to to be around whenever his release date was. And by the time I was like 22, I could remember my best friend going online and was like, like the guy's not getting out. And then I found out that he died in prison. A part of me was really happy, and I felt like I could probably just like finally like breathe and take my head from being underwater and just like living in fear, but the fear never went away. It was always the fear of, of being abducted again, the fear of being hurt, even being in relationships and like trying to date. A lot of times it didn't go well, because sometimes you flash back during intimacy. And that's really hard to deal with, especially you're in a relationship with someone. They don't know how to cope. Like, they don't know how to deal with whatever you're going through because they haven't gone through it. So it's like they can't be the best version of themselves for you when they just don't know how to be. And I've had relationships that have suffered because of my non-intimacy or my lack of affection or even just my attitude. You know, because I haven't always just been so pleasant. I've been a hot mess, just frankly, just been a hot mess. Just dealing with life and trying to figure out how to just come out of being afraid. And I moved to another state, and I lived in a couple different states. And I moved to another state, like I met this person, and the first warning sign that I got that this person was a piece of shit, I should have took that warning sign and moved on from that piece of shit. But I was too forgiving, and I was too forgiving, and I guess the word could be naive, even as an adult. Like, I was naive. And I even told the person not to come around. Like, I didn't want to be bothered with them, but they still ended up coming around, and it literally was like a fight, if you will. A fight to protect myself and to keep this person from endangering me. But my fight just wasn't good enough. And when it was all over, the person refused to leave. And I was such in a place of just like shock, disappointment, hurt. I couldn't understand like why this person did this. Like, I just couldn't understand it, and I still can't even understand it. It was just very weird. And I remember the person, they refused to leave. They were like, they were not leaving, because they were like, get in the shower. And he was like, I'm not leaving until you get in the shower. And it was just getting really crazy and really scary for me because I was like in a state of shock. So I did what he said. I got in the shower. And when I got out of the shower, I had hopes that he was gone, but he wasn't gone. He was still there. And I just asked him to leave, and he wouldn't leave. And I just kept asking him, like, why would you do this? Why'd you do this? Or whatever. And didn't really have an answer. And then their phone rang, and then finally they left. And I just went to sleep. And then the next morning, I just felt so weird and out of control. And I sent my best friend a text message, and she called me, and it was very uncomfortable because here I am at the age that I was, and I just could not believe like this was happening again. And the person, they started like texting me, like they wanted to meet up, they wanted to talk, and this, that, and the third. And I was kind of like just trying to get an understanding of why, like, why did you do this? Like, I don't understand why you did this. It was crazy. Like, it was really crazy. And those thoughts of like suicide came back, of like not wanting to live anymore. Because it's like, how do you go through this pain again? And what do you do now? Because when the first time it happened, I was a child, and now I'm an adult. And it's like, how did this happen? Like, how are we here again in this same situation where you don't have anybody that you trust? There's nobody that you want to call. My best friend didn't live in the same state as me, and I really didn't know what to do. I just wanted out from life. I did. It's really sad, but I really did. I just wanted out because the pain again was like all too familiar. And the person, I did want them to be prosecuted. And then there was moments when I didn't. And the moments when I didn't, I was like, well, if he goes to prison, then it's back to me going to court all over again, like from when I was a kid. And it's like, I didn't want to go through that uncomfortableness anymore. And then I still proceeded to press charges on the person. I even had text messages of them apologizing, and, conversations of recorded calls of them like apologizing. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. I was told that the grand jury was going to indict the person, but they never did anything. They didn't do anything. And so, it was the anger, it was the bitterness, it was, being alone and having to build yourself back up. It's embarrassing when you go to 3 different hospitals. The first hospital I went to, they couldn't do anything, and I was feeling so much discomfort. And I remember calling my very first boyfriend that I ever had, and I was telling him like I didn't want to go through this again, because I've already dealt with this when I was a kid. And he was like, you have to do something. He was like, you just can't let a person get away with doing this to you. And I was like, you know what? I was like, he's right. And so I went to the hospital, and I did. I called the cops before I went to the hospital. And they came to the first hospital, and they got a statement from me. And the guy that did this, he said that he was going to come to the hospital. But of course he never showed up, because he ended up calling me while I was there, waiting to be seen. But they couldn't accommodate me. So I ended up having to go to 2 different hospitals. One, they couldn't do anything, like they didn't do like rape kits there, so I couldn't be seen there. Then I had to go to another hospital. They couldn't do like the rape kits either. They basically ran blood work, gave me medicine, in the event that the person was infected. And then I had to go to another hospital. So it was like the fourth hospital. So the first one, the first one was the urgent care. The second two were hospitals, and the third one was a hospital. And I stayed there, and had this procedure done. And then when it was all over, it was so weird because it was the wee hours of the morning, and like the officer had came to my house to get my clothes from when the incident occurred. And so I gave it to him, and then like it was weird because he came back and knocked on my door and was like, "Oh, it's got to be in a different type of bag." And like, he was like trying to come in my house, and it was weird because like he came in and was like trying to be nosy, and it was like the wee hours of the morning, and I'm just like, why would you want to come on my house when I just gone through this? And it was very weird for me, to say the least. And like I said, like they sent me an email telling me that the grand jury, was going to indict the person, but they never did anything. They didn't do anything. They did nothing. So then it's like you're left with, what do I do now? Okay, what do I do now? And I was like going to work and like emotionally spent. Like I couldn't even sit still in my chair because I was in so much pain. Like I took one day off from work, and I just was like in so much pain, and I couldn't stay in my house because that's where it happened. I couldn't, like, I stopped sleeping. I just started sleeping on the couch. And it's like, how do you deal with it? I did the one thing that I knew how to do, and that was basically to pick my pencil up, get my notebook out, write about it, write about how I felt, how the person made me feel, how I felt like fucking betrayed by this person. And it's crazy because I would get off work every night at 7 o'clock, and I would go and look for this person because I just wanted to kill them at that time, because I was hurt, and basically just because I was hurt, and I felt like they needed to pay for what they did to me. But I do thank God for deliverance. I do thank God for me not ever being able to run into that person during those days after work when I just was just on a rampage and just wanted revenge, because I would be in prison, and that's not where that's not where I belong at. And so trauma is not always easy. It's not easy to always walk through. It's not always easy to hold your head up. It's not always easy to just deal with these things, and people don't understand that. And I'll tell anybody that has gone through this, you are going to be hurt. You're going to be devastated. You may become numb to the pain, and the pain is just, sometimes it's just there. Your new relationships may not last. You may start to question yourself on many different levels about different things. You just may feel some kind of way. But what I can tell you is this, is that it's not the act of the crime, it's the aftermath. And just know, and it is probably cliche to say, hey, you're never alone, but you're never alone. I can remember trying to call grief counselors and Googling the phone number for Rain, and no one picked up the phone. the hotline numbers, they didn't work. No one picked up. No one ever called me back. And I really needed somebody really bad during that time. I really needed a hug from my parents, but I could not tell them what had happened because they had already gone through this. I did use social media as an outlet to let other people know that, you have a voice and to speak up for yourself. And the person, I did go to their social media page and I did write that they were a rapist on their social media page. Because I felt like people needed to know. And even in this moment, I still feel like people need to know. So, the first person is dead. Like, he's dead. Because he did die in prison. And a part of me just wants to just say the person's name so bad. I know the person lives in Mission Bend. And their name is Onahan. And they go by Dari. And I really wouldn't even care if somehow he saw this video, because I would want him to see this video, because I'm just going to look in this lens and just tell you that you're a piece of shit. Your day is going to come. The law may not have been able to track you down, locate you. You may have left locations, and I just want to tell you that you're a piece of shit. Your family is a piece of shit. I know, allegedly, like, your mom or whatever cut you off because of what you did to me. And if she really did do that, I'm very proud of her, because you're a real piece of shit. And I hope that you get the help that you deserve, the help that you need. And I hope that you don't do what you did to anyone else, because I don't really feel like I probably was first. I feel like probably you done that before because of your behavior that you bestowed that same day, October the 16th. You're just a piece of shit, and I just want you to know you're a piece of shit, and your day is gonna come. And when it does come, I hope that you find peace within yourself. I hope that you're a piece of shit ass. I hope that your piece of shit ass pays for what you did. Of course, I never want to see your little face again anymore. But you're just a piece of shit. Just basically know that. You're a piece of shit. Real fucking piece of shit. And, fuck him. Yeah. I will just say, and moving on with traumas, write down your issues. Talk to someone. Be by yourself if you have to. Try not to be so bitter if you can help it. It's not easy, because I'll admit, like, I'm still bitter as shit. Like, I'm still bitter. And if you're someone out there and someone tells you no, or if you have to literally fight for someone not to do certain things to you, I'm just going to tell you just to just pray. And even sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you, prayer just sometimes did not work for me. Anger worked for me, which is crazy to say. It worked for me in the moment, but it also worked against me. Read some books. Write something. And just don't become like some forever broken person. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm just like broken because sometimes in relationships it is hard to be with someone intimately or even just be around someone or go places because you feel like, like you're gonna get abducted or like someone's gonna hurt you. But your silence is not what's gonna make you better. What's gonna make you better is you opening up yourself, opening up your mind and speaking it, talking to someone, talking to yourself, processing, having faith in something, having faith that God's gonna, see you out of it, that you're gonna be okay. Basically, in a nutshell, just get help. Basically, just get help. Because you don't want to harm someone. You may have those thoughts, but you really don't want to do that. Because if you do unto them what they did unto you, your karma is just going to be bad. And if you know somebody out there that is hurting, try to be there for them the best that you can. As for me, it's really hard for me to really let people in. At times, I don't really talk to my friends as much. I don't really talk to them about my issues or my problems a lot of the times. A lot of times I just like to just be in my own little bubble because that's the safest place. And if you've just got to stay to yourself because that's your safest place, then just stay to yourself. Because being alone sometimes, like, that's your best safety. That's really all I want to say. Just know you're not alone. The days are not always bleak and dim. They do get brighter. If you have any questions or anything that I could possibly, help you with, I can try to do my best. And just take care of yourself, basically. You're not the person to blame, which I mean I have blamed myself for a lot of things, but I know like I'm not the person to blame. Like I know that. I didn't ask for those things to happen to me, and I'm not nobody's fucking victim anymore. Because you just have to overcome, and you know, a good person just can't be held down long. So, as they say, weeping may endure in the night, but I promise you, joy is definitely going to come in the morning light, and you always remember that. You just remember that. You're going to be fine. You got this. They say that's cliche to say, but trust me, you got it. You will be just fine. You will be fine. And, if you just need someone to talk to or something like that, I'm not going to give you my phone number, of course, but, I can correspond with you via the comments. I can, give you more in-depth things that I've done or things that I still try to do now. One good calming thing that I like to do is I like to just turn on the music and just dance, 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 and just listen to music. It is so that's a good piece of therapy. But once again, if you have any comments, any questions, excuse me, just put it in the comments, and I'll just correspond with you that way. Okay, thanks.